Dan, I am so happy to meet you. I was talking about your book. I've mentioned your book on the show. I was just telling you before we officially started that I often read books for people who come on to kind of get me up to speed, but I personally read your book and found it really life-changing, really life-changing. Buy back your time. I just thought it was amazing. I know there's so much more to you, but I just wanted to say that to you. So
Well, it's an honor. I'm a big fan of your work. I usually get called by the business podcasts, but I'm more spiritual and woo than most people know. So I'm a fan of the things you talk about in your philosophies. So I'm excited for this conversation.
that's so nice. That's so generous and kind. And I'm so happy for that. Like, I'm not surprised having read your book. What your book communicated to me was really putting what matters first. But that's awesome. So, your story, aside from what you do, like who you are and what you've been through, it's a movie. Like, I'm wondering who's going to play you in the movie. Like, is it Joaquin Phoenix? Like, what's
Ryan
happening?
Reynolds. But if I'm allowed to vote, I'm going Ryan Reynolds just because he's funny and he's Canadian. So
Yeah, I could see that. You're a little bit sexier. He's got the little boy
let's
face. You've got
go.
the more like it.
I'm
Not that
listening. What do we
you're
got?
you're more on like I would say there's like the Leonardo DiCaprios of the world who look like boys from a boy band, which is cute. Or there's like the George Clooney's of the world. You're more in the George
Clooney
Clooney.
side. I like it.
Yeah.
More wise looking. Yeah, no, it is pretty special. And
Tell us a little bit about that specialness. Tell us a little bit about your movie life story, which is actually
I'll tell you the part that I don't share often that I think this audience specifically would appreciate. So, I grew up in quite a bit of trauma and just challenges. I think most people do. Everybody has a different association what that means. But my mom was an alcoholic. My dad wasn't around very much. He was, trying to make ends meet. I'm the second oldest of four. Grew up in a small town, Eastern Canada, and I mean, I guess I had a lot of energy. I got diagnosed with ADHD when I was 11, but honestly, knowing what I know now, I was just a boy, that was
100%.
curious. So, but I got put on medication when I was like Ritalin. And so, like, at a very young age, not only did obviously I didn't know at the time, but there was a lot of like emotional abuse in the home and whatnot, but there was this sense that I was different and I was broken. And that kind of frame just caused me to make a lot of bad decisions. And I ended up, getting introduced to drugs when I was 13, and just my life literally spiraled out of control just because I was so intense with my approach to things. And, I got taken out of my home at a young age, put into crisis centers and eventually foster care, and then get kicked out of foster care, put in group homes. And yeah, there's this point, when I was 16, after going through in and out of the system, where I essentially I was on the run from the police and I needed to get out of the city I was in. So I had a backpack with a handgun and I decided to steal a car. Decided to go to Montreal. So I grew up in the East Coast of Canada in a small town. And on the drive to Montreal, I ran into a routine roadblock and got into a high speed chase and didn't have my driver's license. I was high and drunk at the time. I just remember telling myself before I stole the car that if I got stopped, I would pull the gun and let the cops take my life. And I ended up coming around the corner, saw an open garage door, maybe watched way too many cop movies and thought, I'll just hide in the garage and run out the back door. But I ended up smashing into the house and wasn't wearing a seatbelt. So just the energy of that impact. But as soon as I realized what happened, I went for the gun. And I found it. And as I pulled it out of the backpack, it got stuck between the seat, the armrest, and the bag. Essentially, it was an old duffel bag, army bag, and I just kept pulling on it and pulling on it because I wanted to. I didn't want to go back to jail. And for whatever reason, it didn't release, and the cops grabbed me and essentially flew me across the front yard and checked me out and frisked me down and threw me in the back cop car. The reason why this is an interesting story, and the part I usually don't get to tell, is for a long time, I didn't believe in a higher power. for a long time, I remember that next morning I woke up sober in that jail cell. And obviously when you hit rock bottom, you start looking for answers. And I just said, God, if you're real, this be a good time to tell me. And nothing happened. And so for like years, every once in a while I would check in and try to read the Bible or talk to somebody spiritual. And the reason I get emotional thinking about it is knowing what I know now, I kind of laugh at myself to think that he wasn't there. She wasn't there. Like it's so beautiful, especially the way, even though you say it's like, it reads like a movie, and I get it. It's wild. Like, how did I go from that to not only not taking my life, ending up killed in jail, because I ended up doing 6 months in an adult facility, released to a rehab center where I did 11 months of programming, 11 months. Average person did 6 months. And at the end of this experience, I'm helping Rick, the maintenance guy, clean out one of the cabins on premise because it's built in an old church camp. And I discovered this old 486 computer and a yellow book on Java programming sitting next to it. And that literally became my new addiction. I just opened up the book and it spoke to me, and I just tapped into this computer and got the computer to say hello world. And that was the moment where I was like, oh, maybe that's why my brain works the way it does, and maybe this is what I should be doing with my life. And so to like then watch again, you can't really connect the dots unless you look backwards. Like, in my deep faith I have today, oof, so grateful. So yeah, that's the part that is, it's really cool.
Well, it's such an honor, literally, to get to sit here. It is such an honor. What a gift that I get to sit here. You know what it reminds me of? There's a question that's asked in the Talmud around the story in the Bible when Jacob is dying and he has to give a blessing to who's going to be the next leader, and his 12 kids are around him, and everyone thinks he's going to pick Joseph because we know that Joseph was like born with this capacity to like read dreams, and he had this incredible connection to the divine from the moment he was born. And his brother Judah, was like, he was a kid who went through it. He had a lot of falls and he had a lot of dark nights of the soul. And when Jacob dies, he calls Judah over and he goes, "It's you, you're the leader. It's you." And he goes, "How could it be me? Like, I threw my brother in a pit, tried to kill him. He basically got, taken down to Egypt, but like my intent wasn't that, and then I did all these other horrible things. He slept with a prostitute. There was so many things in the story, right?" And his dad goes, "Because who you've become in spite of that, and in order to be a leader, you can't have been born the kind of person who never knew what it was like to be down in a well. The only way you can lead is if you know exactly what that feels like and you've pulled yourself out of that. That's the only way you can lead." And I've never said that to anybody, but I'm listening to this story, and while on one level it sounds the way you could hear it sound, it's an initiation. Like, the people in this world, right, who have chosen to take a path this way and alchemize it. A lot of my listeners know a few years ago, who knows how, why things happened, but we moved in next door to Bobby Kennedy and Cheryl Hines. They became really close friends of ours. And, Bobby doesn't miss a day where he doesn't, he doesn't go to a meeting because he's got a lot of stuff in his past, which he speaks really openly about. And it makes total sense. Complete and total sense. And I just have like the deepest respect for you and for anybody who's been willing to look themselves straight square in the face and fully transform what was once so much emptiness into so much purpose. And I had no idea we were going to have this conversation today. I was satisfied with talking about this book and how this book is really about creating freedom in your life, whether you're a CEO or you're just the CEO of your life. And I did know a little of the story because it's in the book, but what you were so willing to do just now, the humility, the power, I'm aware, I'm just going to say this, that as much as you've already done and you have a huge audience and people adore you, I mean, the resonance of what you are and who you are, it hasn't even scratched the surface. And it doesn't need to come from any hustle or any more achievements. It'll just start coming in droves as you continue to really claim the medicine that's in this story, because there is so much of it. And we've only seen the tip of the iceberg, I believe.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I can't even right now.
I mean, this is why like I was excited for this conversation because
Let's do it.
There's a whole lot. You know, even the idea of like time freedom, because people read the book and they're like, I need more time. I look at it as mind freedom. I look at it as a path to live that doesn't feel heavy. But and I love the way you express that. Like sometimes I question myself, Cathy, because like I'm worried. I don't want to be that person that convinces people it's easy or it's fast. Because man, I've done the work. I continue to do the work. Like
So obvious, by the way.
I'm like, I sit back and I go, look, I got two things I wake up every day. I ask myself, you know, how do I become the person that I think God created me in his image or my potential and strive for that and maybe never, ever even come close to it, but that's okay. I'd rather wake up every day to live in that and then share with the world. Like that's the part I've leaned into in the last decade, because what's crazy, Cathy, is I didn't share that story ever for 15 years. 17 years I lived my life as an entrepreneur. I built companies, I raised money from investors. Even my wife, she was pregnant with our second child before she ever heard me share any of that, because growing up in it, and once I got sober and kind of cleaned up my act, and my brothers kind of, because they also were dealing with some stuff, my sister, like we kind of pretended like it didn't happen as a family. So there was a lot of shame. And I remember when I was writing my book, I know. And my dad called me and he goes, because he talked to my brother, and my brother asked me about it. He's like, are you going to talk about it in your book? And I said, it's kind of who I am, man. And if you don't know that part about me, then it's too easy to dismiss me as different. And I'm not.
Yeah.
And my dad called me one day and he goes, hey, I was just thinking about your book you're writing. And, I don't know if your mom would be okay with you talking about some of the stuff you guys went through. It'd probably hurt her. She'd never tell you this. I'm like, yeah, sure, Dad. Mom doesn't say a lot in the first place. I doubt she cares. And it was just funny to watch, the reaction to it. But I don't know. The first time I ever told the story public, which was 3 or 4 years prior to writing the book, I realized like, I just don't want people to know me and not know me.
It's so interesting because I'm sure you're friends with him, Mark Groves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Canadian truth seeker.
Mark's great. Yeah.
I'm sure you're friends. Anyway, yeah. So he's a good friend of mine. And he says to me, and I repeat it all the time, that liberation it's never a one-way street. It's always two ways. And it's interesting because had you co-signed on that, not to say it, right? Had you agreed, so you would be co-signing their shame, right? And I'm also sure you know Dan Harris, but I remember when he and I first spoke and he was like, it came down to, you know, people who know or don't know, he had like literally a break, like a mental break on TV, found his way to meditation, this, that, and the other. Anyway, it came all the way around to confronting shame, that he basically had to have tea with every part of himself. He had to welcome it. He had to welcome it. And
That's a
once he could
beautiful way to
find
say
that,
that.
yeah, that's something my mindfulness teacher once said to me, you have to have tea every morning with every part of yourself. And he basically came to that conclusion that like you can't have a mindfulness practice or a meditation practice if you are carrying shame. It will not work. That will be the poison that will break you over and over. And it's really the thing for you to share, because it doesn't matter what the shame looks like for people, but we all have had something in our life that we feel we now have to perform around and hide. And as long as we are doing that, as long as we can't be whole with what we are, we can't meet God, we can't deeply, fully be impactful to the world, because the greatest redeemer is to let go of your own shame, because you give other people permission to do that. And I mean, that's honestly why I love having friends who are on the sober journey, because I feel like they're so in integrity that whatever addictions other people have, and everyone's got something, you know, it doesn't have to be a substance. It's just the beginning of the redemption to say, this is what it is. You know, I think about King David, and the guy had all these like, you know, issues, and people know about him and, you know, things that he was doing. And meanwhile, it's like he could write these Psalms that we're all still saying 1,000 years later, because he could literally come face to face and put it at God's feet and say, this is me and my brokenness. And that is what makes humanity. I mean, my rabbi who lives in the old city of Jerusalem, he says, you know, since we're all connected, obviously, and we're all a piece of the master, maybe we're the better piece. He says, because God is only perfect. God doesn't have the free will to do something that's not good and then go beyond it. It doesn't have it. God's choice is only light. It's only love. It's only good. And maybe, he says, God was so brilliant that in its infinite intelligence, God creates a human and says, watch what they can choose from the depths of their destruction. They can choose to turn it, which is something that is the aspect of God's creation that can do that. That's not in God's free will, because God only knows the truth. You know what I'm saying? So I
Totally.
love that aspect. And I think that setting down of shame, oh, what you give to people, there's honestly, there's no more freedom than setting down shame. And that's the beginning of getting so honest and healthy. And you can't do it without that.
It took a while. I get it, because I remember the first time I shared that story, small event, 200 people, and I got off stage and people came up to me and there was like a lineup, and like the first few people would say, hey, I want to tell you something, but I haven't shared this, so keep it between us. And it was just like back to back. I got arrested for
Back to
drinking and
back.
driving. I did, you know, I got this happened to me, and I was, but in the same breath, it was like you said, it was, I get to know people that I've known for a long time in a way that I didn't know them. And I remember when I
Ah,
was writing the book, debating if that was literally the opening line, because and the math I used was very simple. I thought to myself, my dad at the time was 50 or 65. And I was like, I'm not going to wait until my dad moves on from this earth to help people. Cause I knew that was the big thing. I do a lot of work with at-risk youth. Like that's my real passion in life. And I knew the potential of a story to shape and support people. And I just was like, I'd rather take my dad never talking to me for the rest of my life as a consequence. Luckily, it was the opposite. He became incredibly proud and has
see,
become, yeah, it was really beautiful to watch. I mean, as you know, like I think me doing my work indirectly without me doing anything helped other people kind of.
of course.
Yeah, that was a neat realization, because I think for a while I was always frustrated with family members, and the more I just leaned into doing the thing for me, they just kind of, I think it was my energy towards the conversations that
Yeah,
shifted, that
that's it.
like then they kind of acted into that new
Yeah,
realization. It's kind of cool.
it's beyond cool. Yeah, the last thing I'll say on this, and then I want to ask you another question that more specifically relates to this book. But my friend in LA, she's a screenwriter, and she's like, if you want to make the audience hate a character in the movie, you just make them perfect.
That's a great line.
Right? And she goes, but if you want the audience to root for someone, then you've got to have something in act one that shows that they screwed up royally, that they have had, like, Good Will Hunting. It's like a perfect example of this. The kid is flawed, he's broken, it's like everyone's on his side, like that's the reason we all see ourselves in that character. So it's, who do we think we're kidding to try to impress people? Because you're like, look at my car, look at my bank account, look at my achievements, look at my social media, and people are just feeling further and further away from you. And when you actually say, hey, this is all the scars I've got, and here's what I'm doing with them, and here's the real story. It's like everyone's just glued. Speaking of a little bit of this, how it relates to the book, I highly, highly recommend this book, Buy Back Your Time. I personally had just read it, and I said to my producer, please reach out. I love this book. I've been talking about it. I would say one of the headlines of why I loved this book was that what you helped me remember was, you're like, hey, you have no business being busy all day. The thing that you should be doing is your spiritual work. The thing you should be doing is having your soul be your muse. And then when you have like gone to the well and listened and had that connection to the divine or whatever it is, it's gonna, now if you've got 2 hours in your day to work, that's gonna cook with some gas. And I was like, he's so right. Like, when you gave this like sketch, and who knows if it's real, maybe it is, but like a sketch of like what Oprah probably does with her day, or what she should do. It was like, wake up, meditate, eat a good breakfast, go do some yoga, read a good book, fill yourself up, have one good meeting with your team, and you're out. And I was like, oh my gosh. So in that single moment, my team can attest. I was like, we're not doing any team meetings anymore. I'm on 12 hours of team calls a week. Done. Overnight, we became so much more successful as a team because I was like, what am I doing? I've got to go do the work that actually. So let's talk about this incredible paradigm shift, this book, where it comes from, all of the intention behind what I just said that you put into this book and more.
Yeah, I appreciate the compliments, honestly. I mean, you write a book, as you know, and you hope people read it and resonate with it. And it's become kind of a movement, honestly, in the entrepreneurial world, which is really cool. I wrote a book for 25 people. I wrote down the names of the people I love that are closest to me, where I had seen them continuously. You know, that concept of like, you'll continue to relearn the same lesson until it's learned. Like, these 25 names, from my best friend Nick to my brother Pierre to my wife Renee, like Mike, the bike shop owner, like everybody. And in the book, it's literally real people in my life, and I just changed their name for their own privacy. And even the Oprah stuff was like heavily researched, like heavily like,
Oh
I
my
wanted to give
God.
people a sense of what's possible at the highest level, because what I believe for years was, if I want to make more money or be more successful, that it equaled pain. And that was my experience. And, that's a wild belief if you're trying to be successful. It's like, if you have the belief that being rich makes you evil, then you're not going to wake up out of bed running to the computer to go try to make money, because your belief system's off. So once I realized that, oh, to your point, my job is to be the best version of me in those practices, so that when I do interface with the rest of the world, the potency's there, the energy's there, and I'm allowed not to do bookkeeping, and I'm allowed not to run meetings, and I'm allowed not to manage my emails or my calendar. Like, and guess what? It turns out again, it's not time freedom, it's mind freedom. Like my energy throughout the day continues to stay high. So I'm not depleted. When I go have dinner with my family tonight, like game on, because I went from great conversation to great meeting to great process to like resets and workouts, and like just I designed the life that works for me. And I also believe you can build your empire. Like it's not about doing small things either. Like I run like $160 million a year company, and I have multiple interests, and I have a whole AI venture studio, and I have several CEOs that report, I guess, directly to me, but not really. And so it doesn't mean simple. It's small. It's not simple, but the operating principle that I use has always been that same philosophy, even when I was like, and learned through pain. The buyback loop. Like when I feel, okay, things are out of whack, I look at it and I do a time and energy audit in my calendar. Then I figure out what needs to come off my plate and I transfer. And then I fill with things that light me up, that make me better, that are going to help me develop to become the next person, because that's all we got. Like we either realize that there's a complexity ceiling that's going to hold us back and we accept that this is what it is, or if we have a desire for more, which I think, we should, because we're here to create. That's what my morning is. Literally, I say it all the time. I create connected to my creator. I ask God, please use me to serve other people. Period, full stop. Whatever way you see fit, put it on my heart. I'm listening. Let's build, And then I just try to be very intentional about where I then focus my time. So that's why I wrote the book, was for those 25 people. And as I was writing it, I would be like, did I address this thing? Did I address this thing? Like the 5 time assassins, which is the 3rd chapter, came as a byproduct of me realizing there was like 6 people on the list that I needed I need a chapter just to attack some of their default responses to life that causes them to just have energy suckers in their life, or time assassins, as I wrote about.
Share a couple of those.
Well, I mean, the big one is the self-sabotager, like the person that keeps making. Great example. I just got off a call with, I have a big group of people I coach. And one of the guys, this guy, Steve, is like, what do you do when your business partner steals from you? That's a wild question, because I have enough self-respect that if somebody steals from me, I call the police. I don't care if they're my business partner. So that self-sabotage, what I've discovered, people that end up in these positions, there was red flags, right? And my rule is red flags don't go down. So there's a part of you that knew that person wasn't a good person, but you didn't have enough self-worth or belief in yourself. So you choose a partner with them. And then the first time they do it, you don't say anything because you don't want them to be upset. You let it go by. You teach people how to treat you. So then they think it's okay. I even said, I was like, if he's stealing from you, call the police. He goes, well, he doesn't call it stealing. He calls it a distribution or intercompany transfer. I'm like, if it's not approved by the board, and hopefully you're on it, that's theft. And so like the self-sabotager is a funny one, because that person, if you get honest with themselves, like really those like kind of like internal, like the bigger the decision I got to make, the more inside I go. That's my rule. The bigger it's going to impact my life, the more I get quiet. We always know. Like I've never said the sentence, I wish I wouldn't have listened to my gut. Never. So that's one. The self-medicator, that was me. Even though I quit drugs when I was 17 and was sober for years, I convinced myself, oh, you know what? Maybe I could drink a little bit from time to time. And it didn't work. I went a decade of just being a casual alcoholic and really creating a bunch of friggin' what I call emotional shrapnel, like just massive amounts. Like it's interesting. People are like, oh yeah, what productivity app you use? And I'm like, how about audit where you create issues in your life that takes your time, like arguing with people or being short with people or hiring the wrong people or drinking too much and saying the wrong thing and then waking up the next day embarrassed and having to make a bunch of phone calls and apologize. Like that's what the time assassin chapter was for me, was an opportunity for me to be like, this costs nothing, no money, and will save you, for a lot of people, 10, 15 hours a week. The penny pincher, the person that, they walk over dollars to pick up dimes.
Yeah.
Like my dad used to brag. He's like, oh yeah, penny saved is a penny earned. I was like, yeah, but then where do you find the time to become more valuable, to make more dollars? You know, he used to mow his lawn every Sunday. I remember he had a couple of rental properties and he would leave for 5-6 hours after being gone all week, 4 kids, to mow a lawn. And I remember once I started understanding business and he was still doing it, I was like, why do you do that? He goes, I like to do it. I said, well, Dad, I like to race cars. He's like, yeah. I go, I don't think it's the same kind of like. I said, if you like it so much, why don't you offer to cut the neighbor's lawn? He goes, I don't like it that much. I said, I don't think you like it then. And he's like, oh yeah. Because most people own rental properties, pay somebody to mow the lawn. So it's kind of interesting how people just penny pinch themselves into smallness instead of looking at, for me, again, my left brain side of me, my programmer background, it's just leverage. That's the way I think about it. And that's what I wanted to help people see is I want you to be the artist. I want you to create. That's why like my whole thing is get unstuck, reclaim your freedom and build your empire. And I want you as an artist to express yourself at the highest level. I just want you to create. I want every soul on this earth to do the thing that lights them up, that creates the value for other people. It could be entertainment, it could be of service or whatever. And then the stuff that doesn't, it turns out, and this is wild once you realize it, you can hire people that play at the things you work at. Like it's right. When you, I remember first time I hired a bookkeeper, Sandy's her name. I thought everybody hated spreadsheets as much as I did. Sandy loves them. She is so happy reconciling bank accounts and entering data. And I'll tell you, if I take that away from her, that's like, she's not happy. And it's just so wild that it's like, oh, okay, I don't have to clean my house because I can create employment and have somebody support me so that instead of me cleaning the house or my wife cleaning the house, we can go on a date night, or we can go to the gym together, or we could take the kids out to the park. Like that feels like a better trade. And that was the whole philosophy at a high level, is just to try to present an argument for a different approach to how people essentially use their resources.
So yeah, it's brilliant. And it is so true that there are people who do play at the things that you're having to struggle for. One of the things that I see come up as a through line, sometimes even in myself for sure, is a way in which having support, having people there can create some stickiness. And it could be in the sense of you've hired people, but you're still over functioning because you don't feel worthy of being supported. And that might be something that's residual.
The pre-cleaning the house before the cleaning people come.
Yeah, right. Like I don't really know how to feel supported, or not knowing how to delegate. So you're still taking on too much, or you're not being crystal clear what you need. And I just find that there is an art to leading a team and to having the capacity to just simply ask for what you need and do that well, and do that where people don't have to guess and they can show up well and you hire well and all of that. And that has had its own journey in my life, but I look around and see so many, especially women entrepreneurs that I'm friends with, who we've built a lot, and there's a lot of room for us to now find more ease, but we're still addicted to stress and pressure. And so there's just a way in which now there's just more stress and pressure, so finding a way to make that all really work, I think, is easier said than done for most of the people I know that try to go and implement it. I know for myself, before you even get to the business side, I have 3 daughters, thank God. And I had this like cross to bear where I was like, I won't have a nanny. No way. Forget the fact that I'm now the breadwinner, because that was also on me. I was like, oh, I'll show you, husband. I can make the money, right? So then I did that. And then I start making several $1 million a year. And I'm like, I'm not going to have a nanny because I have it to prove. So watch me, and it was just like, at some point, something's going to give. Right. And, in my business, my accountant says to me, it's like 3 years ago, she goes, for every dollar you make, you spend 60 cents on your team. I see they're getting, and she starts rattling off the bonuses. Do you feel worthy of this team? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And I'm like, all right, well, yeah, you got me. I was like, you got me. So I've really been working at making it feel healthy and, allowing people to support me while feeling like I can be as generous as my nervous system wants to be, which is overly generous, and I feel worthy of the support. But I don't know if you want to speak to this. I don't know if it's the same for men as it is for women. I see it with women a lot.
I would
Um,
love to.
yeah.
Yeah. So the fun part, out of the 25 names, it was pretty much 50-50. There was a lot of women on there. I actually support and mentor and coach most, like not mostly women, but it's 50-50. Like, and I think the reason why is it is different. In all the beautiful ways that men and women are different.
Mhm.
Um, and I've kind of designed this thing. It's not in my book, but this philosophy I call the trauma trust barrier, because in many ways, the fear of letting go is connected to something, right? It could be the fear of letting somebody down. So I have a team member that now does work that I've committed, I put my name to, and they don't do it the way I would have done it. So then I let that person down. That person then looks at me. I mean, I had a woman, she was making like 50, 60 million in her business, but she still could not let go of her personal household tasks and like everything, like accounts pay. Like she had a whole finance department in her business, but then she would still be responsible for managing all, payments and stuff. And I remember like really going deep with her in a call and said, why? And then she got to this realization that she would feel absolutely horrified if her private school didn't get paid. And then they knew that as a mom, she wasn't on top of her things. Interesting. Let's talk about that. But I get it. A lot of people, my wife went through this. She talks about it publicly, but she had a lot of fear and shame bringing help into the home because she didn't want to hear from her mom that she was too busy. Big fancy pants entrepreneur. You can't take care of your family. So you have a house cleaner and you have people doing the yard stuff and traveling with you and all that stuff. But I think of this way. I think the world will show you where you're not free. And I like the way you think, the language user on the central nervous system, because I think that's the feedback loop. And then I invite people to be curious about that and then go like, what is it about that? Right? What is it about that, fear that they won't do it as good as me? Right? Well, that's true. They're not you. They should never, you shouldn't. I think having an expectation that anybody could do it as good as you is kind of not fair to them. But 80% done by somebody else is 100% freaking awesome. And when the other part of that I didn't write in the book that I wish I would have is, and if that's not good enough, go be better. Because you're better, let's call it 150% where you're at today, then that 80% is really awesome. And those people are only going to be as good as you are for them. Like the big shift that I've had, I guess, as a leader that's allowed me to recruit CEOs. Like everybody that is a CEO of one of my companies they can work anywhere and they decide to wake up and help me build my goals. The frame that I use now, the mental model is that my job is to be of service to them and that I'm creating a place for them to feel my desire to watch them grow. And then the challenges that we face as a team on the same side of the table towards the thing is a collaborative process. It used to be accusational. It used to be angry. It used to be like, you've messed up, you're dumb, whatever. I'm not proud of how I used to be as a 20-year-old, but all these lessons I write about in the book, like I went through them myself and then was like, ouch, that hurt. Okay, that's not smart. Oh, this person quit. That's really disruptive. I really liked him. I wish he would have stayed. But that whole model of saying like, how do I stop feeling, it's also even the entitlement of like, this person should be better, or this person should know this, or this person's not listening. It's like, did I communicate clearly? Like every time somebody's like, I think I have the wrong person on my team, the first question I ask them is, well, show me the process that they use to do the work you ask them to do. And they go, well, I don't have that. And I said, okay, that's not good. Let's start there. And then if they go, oh yeah, well, here it is. I say, cool. Did you train them on it? Well, they should know about it. I know, but did you train them? Like humans are humans. My kids play soccer. They go and they practice and then they play a game every week. Like it's kind of funny, the irrational belief people have about how team members should be. So then if you didn't train them, you should train them, because that's like a big philosophy. For me, it's train, don't tell. Like, I don't tell you how to do your job. I train you how to do your job, because if I train you, then I have scale. If I tell you, I have to tell you every time, and that's not very scalable. So then did I train them? If the answer is yes, then I might have a people problem. I'm not saying that you don't have a people problem. I'm just saying if there's a process and you train them and then they continue to make the same mistake, then they may be in the wrong seat on the bus and or need to go find another bus, and it's not your company. And even in transitions, I don't call it firing. And even the language I use to talk about my team, I'm softer about it, you know, but like even in transitions, my philosophy is, once I've discovered that there's a very low probability that you'll ever achieve your goals, personal goals in this team, then it's selfish of me to keep you around, because I'm just doing it for me, because it's easier to keep you around than to transition you off and have something to deal with as a problem. And I just don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
So like, I think even over the years, in those moments where I felt frustrated with team members, I've just like learned to reframe the interaction so that it was easier in my central nervous system. And now it's almost like a game of, who do I want to spend time with, and what kind of conversations do I want to have, and how do I create a scenario that it's fun, and how do I push things onto other people so that I don't have to do the unfun stuff, like pull reports and, you know, do research and manage bookkeeping. Like, so it's kind of interesting. But again, you have to allow yourself to accept the support. That's the real thing. Like, most people, as you know, don't feel worthy. And that comes from a lot of different places. But when you think about it, is like, I had a client once, his wife was not on board with having somebody in their home, which I also understand is the thing. Like, having somebody in your private home when you just want to relax, and it's just like, I'm having a bad day and I just want to lay in my bed, but I can't lay in my bed because there's somebody coming out of my room, and if they see me laying down, I'm going to feel guilty. And like, I get that, all real. But I said to him, I said, you should ask her, because she was heavily involved in like charity stuff in the community. I said, just ask her if she wants to create employment in your city, because that person needs a job, and your wife seems really cool and you're really cool, and I imagine you'd bless them. Let's put our own, you know, discomfort aside for a little bit and see, let's try it on. Do it 2 hours a week. Try it on. Her name is Rosa. His wife would get rid of him before she left in a heartbeat. Like, she is family now. And I just think I think that's also a really cool belief to have, is what if that next person I invite into my life to support me becomes a near and dear friend? Like, my media director, Sam, he's been with me 7 or 8 years, travels with me, lives with us pretty much all the time. He has his own home and all that fun stuff, but like, he's always around because he's my creative partner, and he is the big brother to my boys. And he's been around since they were 5, 6. And like, you know, I told him the other day, there's actually a video of me giving him his dream car. That was a really cool moment where, you know, I had the privilege of, you know, surprising him, and the boys were there, and the video has been seen 100 million times. It's kind of wild. But I
Oh
don't know.
my God. What made it such a viral video?
I think it's what I said about him,
Oh,
because,
I gotta watch it.
oh my God, you're going to get me going. Every time he was building the media team, and the media team is very successful. Like, we do 100 million views a month. It's a multi 8-figure business, and he built it. Like, I worked with him, but it was his thing and he built it. And every time, you know, my philosophy is I want people to be rich. I want people to have the stuff they want. And I tell him, I was like, hey dude, you need to make more money. And he's like, oh, that's cool, man. Let's just give it to the team. And, you know, and that went on for a couple of years. And I was like, yo, bro, like, you need to make more money. He's like, I'm here to learn, not earn, you know? And I remember one day he told me how much money he had saved up. And I was like, okay, time for you to get your Porsche. You want this 918 GT4. Like, it's beautiful. I'm a car guy. I want him to have the car because I want to go drive with him, you know? And instead of getting a car, he goes and buys himself a house. He's 22 years old, buys his first house. Super impressive, but that's the kind of guy Sam is. So I talked to my wife, Renee, and I said, I've got a crazy idea. So what I do is that all my team members that report to me, I make them put their vision board on their phone wallpaper.
Yeah, that's
That way I
great.
can just tap it and see what their goals are. And he had it there. And I worked with my car guy and we sourced it, and yeah, we got him good.
Oh, it's so good. I can't wait to watch that. I feel
Yeah.
like so much of what you just said is made possible by the spiritual practice in your life, because in order for you to train somebody, in order for you to feel worthy to ask for what you need, in order for you to be a good leader, in order for you to make good eye contact, like all of that's coming from wholeness. All of that's coming from the spiritual practice, the time you put into that. And this is where what we talked about earlier ties it all together, because like you were saying, instead of pinching pennies and skipping over dollars, it's like by hiring and firing and having a team, but it's not really cohesive and you're wasting all this money and time, because what's really required is you to be in a state of having enough self-respect and enough clarity that you can have really meaningful conversations. Like Ray Dalio was on this podcast and he talked about, I go, why do you think you're so successful? He's like, the capacity to have transparent conversations. There is no one at my office who is unwilling, because they know like that's number one. Like I want it all on the table with love and respect all the time. It makes us such a good team because there's no bandwidth on you're resenting someone. There's no bandwidth wasted on
Animosity,
animosity.
backstabbing.
Exactly. So I thought that was wild that, you know, and it made so much sense. Like that was his answer. So, you know, and I'm going to ask you another question now, which is based upon something you said earlier and something you obviously say in the book, but Google recently, you probably know this, but Google recently said that the two qualities most important to their most successful contributors at Google is creativity and empathy, which is so interesting because they're not saying, you know, anything that feels like it's a hard skill, you know, and really it's what makes them churn out whatever they feel is their actual results. You talked earlier and you say it in the book that creating this space to play, right? There's like a sacredness to that. And that actually is one of the secrets to building an empire is work less, play more. When people hear that, they get allergic. They don't even understand what you mean. And they think you're being like, you know, you're soft, but it's not really the truth. Can you talk a little bit about what does it mean to play? What are you actually inviting us to do when you talk about play?
Well, I'll tell you, back in my late 20s where, you know, I had a few failed attempts at business and then finally kind of figured it out. But again, I didn't know any other way other than work. So I was working 100 hours a week and keeping all the plates spinning. And back in that headspace, I used to believe that if I'm anything but serious, that people won't take me serious. So there was no play. There was no joke. There was no talking about sports. There was no, how's it going? It was, I'm serious. I want to be successful. I'd failed twice at that point, and that was my approach. It turns out not a very fun person to be around. And that might work hiring a bunch of people that look at you because you're the genius with 1,000 servants. But you try to build a real company that has real enterprise value, impossible, because it just continues to fall under the weight of your capacity. So what happened is I actually went on a retreat to Peru with one of my spiritual kind of mentors, a guy named Philip. And what a beautiful process. It was a 10-day trip, 3 days. The first 3 days was spent visiting orphanages.
Wow.
He calls that the heart opener. And I remember it was the second day we were visiting an all boys, place, and we were playing soccer, and I got right into it. Like the kid in me, like really, just booting the ball as hard as I can. And the teenage boys were like screaming at me in Spanish, like, bring it. And I'm like, watch this. And I remember when I got on the bus, he turned around and he looked at me, he goes, who is that? I was like, who? He goes, who is that guy? I said, what guy? He goes, that guy on the field making fun of those kids, laughing. Like, who's that? He goes, where'd that Dan come from? And he kind of caught me off guard, but he wasn't wrong. I was always the quiet, serious, what's going on in your business? How can I help kind of guy? And I had a blast. And then we did 3 days hiking through the mountains, which was wild because I didn't read the email with the PDF telling me what I should pack. So I froze to death every night, which was all part of the process. It was a beautiful, like, yeah,
Exactly.
just I love that I was like, that was my lesson to learn.
Oh
Pay
my
more
God.
attention. And then 3 days of at a monastery kind of processing and integrating. And that was the moment after that. I remember writing down in my journal, like, play more. You're allowed to play. And guess what? Turns out the playfulness does not mean I'm not serious. The playfulness doesn't mean that I don't have standards. The playfulness doesn't mean that I don't expect people to perform. It doesn't mean, it literally doesn't mean anything. I can be in a meeting and crack a joke about somebody's hair and move on. At the same time, we're going to review some business intelligence data and forecasts, and that, like, it doesn't mean I'm not fun and also very capable. And I will tell you, that part has made it the most fun. Like, I would say half the stuff I do, Cathy, if people follow me on Instagram, because that's really where I post it, like I made a hot sauce. I wish I had it here. I have buy back your tongue hot sauce. It's not a commercial enterprise. It's pure fun. I buy hot sauce all the time because I eat, a lot of protein, and I wanted my own. And I called it buy back your tongue, and we wrote up the back labels, and I bought 500 bottles, and like I give it out, or like I do things like oh my gosh, I bought a t-shirt for one of my CEOs. Every time he talks, he's very verbose. Like I don't know if you have people in your life, but they're just they talk. It's like you ask them a question and just, brrr. So I literally bought a t-shirt. It's black and it just says verbose. And I'm going to give it to him. Like, I think you should have fun with your team. And like, we do a lot of stuff. I work out with them every Saturday. I'm very much a fan of saying, be honest with yourself. Who are you? What are you about? What do you love? And you're allowed to build your life and your business and your expression, your art form as an expression of who you are. And the cool part is the people that vibe with that are going to be attracted to it. They're going to fight over themselves to be on your team. You're going to enjoy it. They're going to enjoy it. And that energy, that is boom. That's powerful. That's empire building. That's expressive. That's enduring. That, because like even I teach this concept of continuity. When people don't align to this process and they have high turnover because they're not honest about how they want to work and how they want to communicate and meetings they want to be on or not, that lack of continuity is actually the biggest loss of value in a business. Having somebody like Sam, like for me to sit down and say, what are your dreams and goals? And for me to make sure I wake up every day to make those real, to have him in my life 7 years. And I literally, this is my conversation I have with my executive assistant, Ann, Sam, Todd, who's the CEO. I want to work with you for the rest of my life. What needs to be true? And I get, like, you want to talk about like the internal work that needs to be done. Most people don't realize that there's an abandonment issue that they are fearful of, right? Most people are scared to have people come into their life, get too close, and then leave to go work somewhere else because they would tell themselves, oh, there it is again. I must not be good enough. They left me with all these problems. And I get that there's a fear to allow that to happen. But again, the world will show you where you're not free. Maybe do the work. Like, I have these honest conversations with them. Like, what would need to be true for us to work together for the rest of our lives? And we talk about like when you want to start having kids and and then we just like figure it all out. And guess what? If I ever get to a place where I can't create the environment where you need to be for your dreams and goals, super okay. And it doesn't mean you hate me or you're mad at me or that I'm mad at you. It just means that like, we just don't have the same like construct. It's like you saying I have a desire to go live in Italy. Cool. I'm not in Italy.
This was so much fun. It's so heartwarming. You are so impressive because you're so present and smart and cool. And I'm so honored. I feel like you poured so much in. It feels like Christmas and birthdays all wrapped up. You have so much to give. You're so generous and so here and so available and kind, and every other thing is like a quotable. And I love that you love to coach and on top of all the things that you built, because the world is so blessed to have you giving over your wisdom. It's really awesome. Thank you so much for making the time. I'm so glad
It's an
that I
honor.
read that book.
No, you're incredible at what you do. And
Thank you.
like I said, I was looking forward to this and did not disappoint. So appreciate it.